cathedrals have tried in vain to show the image of your face. We are, by your design, signature of divine. We'll always sing your name forever and today.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Theology in the Dirt. We want to practice our theology in the public square of our homes, our city, and our world. We record Theology in the Dirt from Global Impact Restoration Rome, where we work to address the foster care and adoption crisis in Northwest Georgia, Southeast, and the world as we practice our theology in the public square. You can check out Restoration Rome by going to restorationrome.org. You can get sermon notes, links to this podcast, and other stuff at theologyindirt.com. My name is Mitchell Jolly.
And I'm Chris Hayes.
How about we get to a little bit of news?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen. Cannonball!
Yes, absolutely. We do have some urgent, horrifying news stories today. From the Dispatch today, thousands of supporters turned out to honor Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who mysteriously died in an Arctic prison in February. A funeral service in Moscow was held on Friday. The ceremony was conducted under heavy police scrutiny, and while officials detained some mourners, surprise, surprise, before the event began, protesters shouted chants against Russian President Vladimir Putin outside the church and cemetery in one of the largest recent displays of mass public dissent. Next, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius accused Russia on Sunday of waging an information war against Germany following the reported interception and leak of sensitive conversations about the Ukraine war between high-ranking military officers. The 38-minute-long audio recording posted online Friday by Russia's state-backed RT Media included discussions about potential strikes on Crimea and the possible use of German-made Taurus missiles by Ukrainian forces. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Saturday called the leak a very serious matter and said German intelligence was working to investigate the matter very carefully, very intensively, and very quickly. President Biden on Friday signed a short-term spending deal that will keep the government agencies operating through March 8 and March 22, staving off a shutdown for a few more weeks. On Sunday, Congress released 6 bills that would fund federal agencies, including Department of Agriculture, Energy, Interior, Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, Veterans Affairs, and the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as the Food and Drug Administration for the rest of the fiscal year, which began on October 1, 2023. The package will be voted on by the House this week before moving to the Senate. And then finally, my last piece of news for today, among many that's available today and having to choose some of the best out among some of the worst. Former President Donald Trump won 3 state primary contests on Saturday, adding more than 130 delegates to his count. Trump commanded large victories in the Idaho, Missouri caucuses and secured all remaining delegates in Michigan's party convention after winning the state primary earlier this week. Former Ambassador Nikki Haley won the Washington, D.C. Republican primary on Sunday, her first victory so far. The win marked the first time a woman has won a Republican primary contest in U.S. history. Trump leads Haley in the delegate count, 244 to 43, ahead of contests in North Dakota on Monday and 15 more states on Tuesday. I think that's Super Tuesday. And so those are my news points for today.
244 to 43?
Yeah.
I think that's the margin of victory of Georgia over Tech the last few years.
I believe it is. Go Dogs! Yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
That's awesome.
Wendy's has been facing a lot of backlash recently with the rumors that they're going to begin experimenting with surge pricing, meaning they would charge more during peak hour times around lunch and dinner, raising prices according to demand. While this is a fairly common practice for industries such as flights, vacations, sporting events, etc., it is not traditionally done well in food and beverages. For example, about 25 years ago, Coca-Cola had plans to increase vending machine prices based on the temperature, and it was not received very well. So then Pepsi came out and announced they would never do that. And then somehow Coke mysteriously decided to back off of those plans and had to do some damage control. So
Nice.
they were quoted as saying, like, hey, if it's colder outside, we should be able to charge more. There's more demand. Or hotter outside.
Right.
Even though Coca-Cola is not thirst quenching. But
That reminds me of New Coke, right? New
As I've
Coke.
got
What a
my
great idea.
Cherry Coke Zero here.
Yeah, I got you.
Anyway, Wendy's did come out a few days ago and say that they are not going to use the dynamic or surge pricing in a PR face-saving move, which is probably the right decision, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if Dave Thomas would be happy about that or not. The Wendy's near my house doesn't even have enough employees to stay open past 6 p.m., so I don't know how they're going to survive trying to jack up the prices during
Surge pricing at
lunchtime.
3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's probably so.
That's right.
And then the Supreme Court ruled this morning that former President Donald Trump cannot be removed or barred from the presidential ballot in Colorado in a unanimous 9-0 ruling. And if you know anything about the Supreme Court, it's nearly impossible to get a 9-0 vote on anything. So to me, this is a clear message sent, and it's probably good news for Trump remaining on the ballot in every other state that is trying to remove him as well. His ballot eligibility has been challenged in 30 states who filed under the 14th Amendment, citing his role in the Capitol riot. The argument centers on Section 3 of that amendment, which states that no one should hold office in the U.S. if they have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Trump is hopeful that the semantics will work in his favor of that amendment, and it seems pretty clear from this ruling that that is likely to happen, and he is most likely going to remain on the ballot in every state.
Nice. It's interesting. We can't get much information from the major sources of news on Robert Kennedy. Like, you only find him in social media, but he's tearing up social media. He's owning it. So I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, if it doesn't fit the narrative, then
Absolutely. That's
I can
right.
talk about it.
Well, I think it's time to get after the podcast.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Shake and then bake. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
It's shake and bake time. Shake and bake, buddy. Shake it before you bake it.
All right, I have to ask Jim and Bonnie, have you guys seen Talladega Nights?
A long time ago.
Okay, all right. Well, if you want a good laugh, it would be worth going and pulling that up and watching that this evening. That's a regular around our household, but don't judge me if you go watch it and forgot. Don't judge me. It's a great piece of comedic filmmaking.
You like a lot of those, don't you, Mitch?
I do. Nacho Libre is probably number one. That's the best movie. You've seen Nacho Libre, right, Jim?
I'm not. No, I don't think so.
You need to repent tonight and go watch.
Jim
Bonnie
doesn't
will
strike
not.
me as a Nacho Libre connoisseur. But
Nacho Libre is one of the funniest movies that's ever been made. It's amazing. Jack Black is the main character. He's Nacho.
Who's Libre?
He is Nacho
it means
and
not,
Libre.
not your book.
Yeah, that's right. Escalito is his wrestling partner.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, you'll laugh the whole time. Bonnie will not think it's funny. I don't know a wife that has thought that movie's funny yet, but all the guys just like it's
That
fantastic.
sounds like a time that when Jim goes up to the cabin by himself.
I got you. Or some guys from our small group gets together and maybe watches that would be fantastic. Yeah, and it gets funnier. Never mind. Well, let's get on to the podcast.
digress.
Yeah, we digress. So today we have some special guests in the studio today, and this is Jim and Bonnie Moore. And we want to talk to you about NAMI, but we want to get to know. We know you. Folks out there might not know you, but we want to really unpack a little bit. Your life a little bit. I'm going to start with you guys. We'll go ladies first, so that you're like, oh, who goes first? We'll go ladies first. So, who is Jim and Bonnie Moore? Bonnie and Jim Moore. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your career background? So, tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm a wife, I'm a mother, but I'm an advocate for people living with mental illness. Where am I from? Originally, I'm from Athens, Georgia.
Ooh, go dogs!
But moved
Gotcha.
around the United States, especially after Jim and I got married 53 years ago, almost 53 years ago, in the Air Force. And I'm going to let him take it from there because, after you've been married 53 years, we're kind of the same person
Yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, we're not, but we are. So.
Well, let me correct. Bonnie says she's from Athens. Actually, she lived a few years in the booming metropolis near Athens called Isla. I'll spell it if you haven't heard of it. I-L-A.
Population of
Just like
200.
it sounds.
That's awesome. Wow.
At one time, it had a traffic light.
At one time. That's amazing.
Doesn't even have a stop sign now.
No, I've never heard of Isla, Georgia.
You ever heard of Commerce?
I have heard Commerce.
All right, it's near Commerce.
Really?
Yeah. Ever heard of Danielsville?
No.
That's the county seat.
Really? Oh my.
What county? Do you remember?
That's great.
Madison County.
Well, it's like, could that be similar to Booger Hollow? Like when you get down to the south part of Floyd County, like
Yeah.
Booger Hollow. And yeah, unfortunately, I do know where that's at. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Just the Silver Creek of Athens, if you.
That's right. That's right. So,
Hey, we have a baseball player, a professional baseball player from there.
really?
Yes.
Who?
Jake Westbrook. He played for Pittsburgh.
St. Louis Cardinals.
That's right.
Wow.
Amongst other teams.
My cousin.
Detroit.
Your cousin?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's the big. And the person that invented ether, Crawford
way.
W. Long. Yep, cousin too.
So Crawford Long invented ether. I'm ashamed I didn't know that. Really?
Yes.
Like Crawford Long Hospital?
born in his
Yes,
hospital.
exactly.
Really?
Yep, long lost cousin.
That's wild. I did not know that. That's amazing.
Not so little Isla, Georgia. How about that?
That's right.
Actually, they're from Danielsville.
I got you.
Well, I mean, Isla, Danielsville, same.
The lines are gray, right?
It's like Lindell and Silver Creek, which whatever, whichever one. So I heard Air Force.
Yeah, well, I was born in Mississippi,
All right.
in Columbus, and lived some of the formative years in Tupelo, the home of.
The Elvis.
Tupelo honey.
Wow. That's awesome.
He lived in East Tupelo.
Okay. All right. Is that
On the other side of the track.
I was going to say, is that the other side of the tracks? That's awesome. Elvis Presley. So, okay. All right. So, I never believe you guys' age is what it is. And I'm not going to ask you to say your age, but there's just no way you guys are as vital as you are and the age you are. Like we said last night, you guys are in the small group we're in also, but we all want to be like you guys. And so I just don't believe. So I was going to ask this question. Did you ever meet Elvis?
Yes.
Did you? No way.
No, I think I saw him in the county fair. I think.
You think? This is before he was big.
No, this was like
Okay.
in 1956.
Okay.
But I'll say that, and then nobody's going to dispute it. But but it seems like I did.
That's
I
wild.
claim that.
You should claim that.
So that happens to coincide with my age, so I can get away with saying things like that. At
You
our
can.
Have you seen him recently? The question.
Some people still do see him.
Exactly.
There's a guy now that everybody's claiming that's him. He's got like the same facial structure.
No way.
Has a beard. Was like mysteriously was at like his daughter's funeral or wife's funeral, whichever one.
Priscilla. Was it daughter? Who?
It's his wife, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was his wife. Was there, has been to Graceland several. Like it was. There's all this like conspiracy theory about this guy. His name's like Bob something, and you can see like some similarities there. So it's pretty interesting, but that's not really
I
as
saw that
important.
on Facebook. Did I? Is it on social media?
Yeah, it's been on social media a lot recently.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Actually, we have some pictures of Jim when they were both much younger. That Jim looks a lot like him.
Oh, there you go. A handsome fella.
That's what my grandmother said. The one that lived in Columbus.
That's awesome. So all right. So let's talk career background. Because Bonnie, what was your career background? Wife, mother?
I was but before we got married, I was a computer programmer
Wow.
and worked at a bank.
Okay.
And ever since, I put it this way: when he was in the Air Force, I did a lot of stuff, but never got paid
Right.
as an Air Force wife, which
Yeah.
kind of helped me get my first job after he got out of the Air Force,
Wow.
which was in sales.
Wow. Where at? For who?
What was the name of that company?
Oh, in Montgomery?
Yeah, I forgot the name of the company.
It'll come.
It will come back.
It'll come back to us.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Kaiser
Office
Office
Works.
Works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so I was a salesperson,
Awesome.
and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Being out with people and doing stuff, so it was fun.
You're probably good at that. I'd buy something from you.
Yeah.
Take my money.
Absolutely. All day. So Jim, Air Force. We heard Air Force. Tell us about your career in the Air Force.
Well, back in the day, after I got out of college, that's a story in itself. When I got out of college, I was top of the list in draft. So this is helping age us too. So draft was still working, and I was basically drafted. I had to do an Army a physical as part of the selective service, I think is what it was called. But at the same time, I had submitted applications for the Navy and the Air Force, and I was not able to. Well, I applied for both of them for, I guess, pilot training, and I didn't score too well in the naval test, but I scored okay to make the cut in Air Force. Now, I wasn't a pilot, but I did go to navigator training, and after training was completed, I went to my first assignment, which was in the state of Washington at Fairchild Air Force Base. And at the time, they had B-52s,
Wow.
and of which I was a navigator on the B-52s, and as soon as I was, well, I guess about 5 months after I was there, the whole wing got up and deployed. We called them wings. That's like a whole base worth of aircraft, and deployed to Guam, where we rotated between Guam, Okinawa, and Thailand for a 6 month period of time while we dug holes with 108, 500, and 250-pound bombs. We dug a lot of holes in the marshland of South Vietnam. Did that for years. I guess I calculated at one time it was like 600 days worth of, we call it TDY, temporary duty, off and on for almost 4 or 5 years during the Vietnam conflict, where we would go over and then come back. And when we come back, we would do our normal job of B-52s back then was to be part of the nuclear deterrent force. And there were bases all spread out over the northern part of the U.S. that was ready to go at any time to fight the World War III, I guess you might call it. Thank goodness it never happened.
Right.
It's interesting that after all of these years have passed, and some of the same aircraft that I flew in when we were in Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, I see them today on the news. The same tail numbers, built in 1960.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they're still flying them.
Wow.
It's a long time. So anyway, so I was in the Air Force 26 years, did a variety of tasks and jobs, and I liked them all. And I ended up at Warner Robins Air Force Base as, I guess we'll call it chief of maintenance of the KC-135 aerial refueling aircraft that we had at the time. We had 2 squadrons worth, 30 airplanes that we had as part of the 19th Air Refueling Wing.
Wow.
So,
He didn't tell you that he has over 5,000 flying hours just in the B-52.
Wow.
Which is a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours.
And over 200 missions over
200.
Yeah. When you said digging holes, does that mean dropping ordnance?
That would be dropping ordnance.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for serving. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
thanking me.
Yes, sir. That's fantastic. So now you're an officer. What was your rank when you retired?
I was a colonel.
Wow.
So I made it up to that high, which I would have stayed on. But and the reason I got out was because of the time. You know, there's peaks and valleys, you might say. Sometimes there's a glut of service people, and sometimes there's not enough. You know, and at the time, the Desert Storm was going on, and after that was over, you know, we spent too much money apparently, so they had to start cutting back. So they cut back on personnel. So I was given the opportunity to retire or get riffed. I didn't know if I would have got riffed, but rather than saying, well, retire or face rift, I were able to say, well, I will retire at my convenience, which would be about a year and a half down the road, so that I would be able to get, we call them fogies, is that right? You know, a pay increase, because you get pay increase every 2 years. So I was able to get that, and so I retired.
Wow.
And after retired, I ended up taking a aptitude test, and so I was
You
capable.
sure you want to tell this?
I do. Yeah. You know, I suppose somebody's listening. You know, I was able to do two things. One was in the military, go in the Army, but I couldn't do that because I just spent 26 years in the Air Force. The other one was a funeral director.
No.
Yes.
No.
You know, out of all of the millions of things that were capable,
Why?
I don't know. But next best to that, I didn't do that. But then I did sort of dig a grave by. I went into education and taught sixth graders for 10 years.
Man, funeral director sounds better, and it's starting to sound really good. That's awesome. Sixth graders, they're smelly, right? They are.
That an interesting bunch. You know, they come in as little kids, and by the time they come back from the Christmas break, they change.
Yeah.
That's a big year. You can really just physically see it. And
Yeah.
it was cool. And the thing I liked about it, a few days, you know, don't go by until I see somebody that I taught. And it's great to see somebody that, well, at church yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
no way.
Yes, yes.
That's cool.
At church yesterday.
Wow.
Or you go to the eye doctor and he's
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's fun.
That is
You know what
fun.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's just fun. So what did you teach?
I taught, it was sixth grade.
Yeah.
And it was, we had three teachers, so we divided up the curriculum into thirds, and I won, in my opinion. I had social studies
Yes.
and language arts, mainly, you know, pronouns and all that.
Nice. That's awesome. That's
So when
good
you
stuff.
talk about all that language, I look at Jim like,
Yeah, he's got it. He knows. He knows the grammar is there. I love it.
Teaching pronouns a lot different today than it was then. I throw that out
just a
there.
little bit.
Yeah, it's
We'll
funny
leave it
we
at
think
that.
pronouns and we go there.
Yeah.
It's true though.
But it's true.
It is true. So how did you guys get to Rome? You were Robbins Air Force Base. How did you
Well,
get to Rome?
Go ahead, Bonnie.
It was a God thing. I was working and Jim was getting another master's degree, and we had our dream home, dream jobs. Girls were great. And Jamie's, our youngest daughter's sixth grade teacher said not to put her in school in Montgomery, Alabama. And we'd been coming to Rome for years because my sister and brother-in-law lived here to visit. And so we came to Rome because they happened to open up the ROTC, Air Force ROTC slot at the high school.
Right.
And Jim put in for it and to be the commandant. And we found out that they could educate Jamie in middle school.
Wow.
He didn't get the job, but we moved. We had no place to live.
Wow.
Our house hadn't been sold. We had one a senior in high school, another one going into high school in Jamie. And we just moved on a prayer. We had no place to live.
Wow.
And we ended up finding a place to live. But that was brought here. We needed to be in Rome because
Yeah.
it ended up, our daughter became very ill. And this is where we needed to be, in this community.
Right.
So it was just,
Wow.
We came because we'd been visiting here for years.
Yeah.
And luckily, Jim got a job. I got a job right away, so
Yeah.
it was just kind of a God thing.
It just worked out. That's
it
providential.
absolutely. It was.
Wow. So that it really kind of segues us really nicely into this question that I kind of want to kick off getting into that is what drives you guys? I think I know the answer to that question, but what is it that drives what you do now?
It's a passion for people living with mental illness and their family members.
Yeah.
Because 1 in 5 people have a mental health condition a year, more than any other disease or any other illness. More people live with that, but it's less known. and there's a lot of stigma. And Jim and I have been passionate because our youngest daughter lives with 6 different diagnoses.
Wow.
And they told us that she'd never be able to read or really be able to do anything. She lives independently. She teaches classes, runs support groups. So
Yeah.
you never say never.
Never say never.
So we see that, and we want other people to feel what we feel.
Yeah. So that driving you, how did you guys, how did you get connected to NAMI? So let me ask, what came first, that driving passion or NAMI? Which one, chicken or the egg there? NAMI.
NAMI.
Okay.
We had a doctor that told us to find NAMI.
Okay.
Psychiatrist, Jamie's psychiatrist. And it's like, what's NAMI? We had no idea. So I looked it up on the internet. Well, there was a NAMI in Rome.
Okay.
And there was only one from Gainesville to Tennessee to Alabama to Marietta, and it was in Rome, Georgia.
Wow.
And so we started learning about mental illness and how to take care of her and how to take care of ourselves. And then it became a passion because we realized so many people fall through the cracks.
Right.
And a high rate of suicide. And so we saw the difference it made in our lives.
Yeah. Now, what does NAMI stand for?
The National Alliance on Mental Illness.
National Alliance on Mental Illness. Gotcha. Now, currently, you guys found NAMI, and it was a source of help for you guys. What do you currently do with NAMI? What are your roles?
Okay, well, let's go back to over 20 years ago, probably
1998.
98. As part of when we found it, what did we do? We went to a meeting, and it was probably just a gathering of people who had like interests, and we found out that they were soon to offer a class for people who would be interested in taking it, learning more about mental illness and how to take care or help someone who has a mental illness. So it was kind of pitched for family members. And so we took it, and we just got involved. And before we knew it, I don't know, we were hoodwinked to some degree, I think. All of a sudden, we have a little lady, she at the time was in her 60s, a little fireball. And she just basically said, here's the book, here's the keys. Here's the keys to your car. You got it. No, it wasn't like that, but it was like that.
Pretty close.
You know Bob Skelton?
Yes.
It was his mother-in-law.
Okay.
And
wow.
As a matter of fact, her son lived with schizophrenia, and he had his first break when he was living with Bob and his wife.
Oh, wow.
And she's the one that actually found NAMI Rome.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But you didn't mess with Juanita. She was about 4'10". And one day she looked at it, she said, y'all have got it.
Wow.
And so we had it ever since.
And and over the years, to go back to your question, we can't find anybody to give it to. And of course, that creates the founders. We weren't the founders, but that founder syndrome is alive and well because we captured a lot of interest and know ins and outs, and in doing so, we would love to be able to have somebody take over. Yeah. Well, obviously, people, if they see us on TV, they would be nodding their heads now and saying it's time to give it up.
But what we do, Mitch, is we teach classes, we run support groups, and when we first started out, we met once a month. We host support groups every Monday night. We have classes that we teach, family to family, peer to peer, NAMI basics. We teach a class on NAMI Smarts, how to advocate for other people. So we're always either teaching or we're running support groups. Right. And last year we touched the lives of over 1,400 people, which is a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
That's great.
So what happens if somebody's struggling, say it's an issue of depression, and they find you online and they call? What happens from the time they get in contact with NAMI until they get into a group? What's that process look like?
Well, they usually call us, and I kind of try and help people work through what they're going through on the phone for a little while, then let them know about our support group.
Right.
And a lot of times they will come to the support group, but the thing is, it's like anything else. Once I start getting better, I kind of move on.
Right.
Not thinking about you need to kind of stay within that group so that you can help somebody else when they're in that situation. So they come to the group, and I tell you, one of the things that they do is when they take the class, because the class is what we call grassroots. It's not written by professionals. It's written by things because we've lived it, we've done it.
Right.
And so they come and they learn things. They go, nobody's ever told me this before. I've been going to doctors, I've been going to therapists, but nobody has ever explained it like this.
Right.
We had a woman that was came to our support group and our family class, and she was a mental health professional, had been doing therapy in hospitals and all kinds of stuff. She came into our class and took family to family, and she goes, I wish I had known this information 30 years ago. She said, because now it makes sense. It's not just words or theories.
Right.
Because there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
It's spiritual, physical, and mental.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole body.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about that, and we do talk about that within our support groups and stuff, because it's the whole person.
Yeah.
And people look at people with mental illness and they don't see the person.
Right.
And they're a person first.
Right.
And they see the illness, not the person.
Right. So how do you guys as Christians, how do you navigate this world? Because I think when I first started, like I've been aware of you guys and what you do at NAMI for a long time, but not until I crashed did I, a few years ago, become aware. I didn't become aware until I'm in the middle of it. And then as a Christian and trying to navigate my way through those things, I found this conflicting
Yes.
worldview. How do you guys navigate? What is that conflicting worldview for you guys? And how do you navigate that in a world that, and there may be multiple worldviews, and I'm making it too simple by dividing it into two, but how do you navigate that world of the definition of what a mental illness is versus what maybe the mind is from a Christian perspective, and how do we deal with the mind-body connection? And so how do you navigate that as Christians in your world? Because it is a complex world. It's not very simple.
And you're right. Sometimes there's two schools of thought.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's almost no in between.
Right.
I can tell you that when Jamie was at her worst, the one thing that I knew is I had to have Christ. I mean, I had to have my faith. I had to keep my feet firmly planted. And she really turned away. And sometimes churches turn away because if you just pray hard enough, if you just do this, it'll go away. But if you have if you've had a heart attack, do you look at somebody and say, if you'd prayed hard enough, you wouldn't have had that? It's the same thing, because our brain is an organ of our body.
Right.
And the chemicals all get messed up.
Right.
But sometimes there's a crack, and as we know, Satan likes to get into that where there's a crack somewhere.
Right.
But Jamie had turned away from the church, and I'll never forget. She was very, very sick at one time, and she just said, "I can't go on. I cannot do this anymore." And I asked her. We had somebody that was a pastor came, and he was going to pray with her, but that was a story unto itself. And later on, when I was in the car with her, it was a horrible, cold, rainy night. She said, "Mom, I can't go on anymore." I said, "Do you want to go?" They were having a church service, and she said, "Yes." And I watched her walk in, and she was a ball. She couldn't even look at you. She couldn't talk. She was just in this dark, dark place. And he started talking to her. Steve started talking to her, and there were people outside praying. And we watched her literally just come up, sitting in the chair. So there's a spiritual thing, but she has a mental illness. So we couldn't just say, okay, stop taking your medications, you're all well, because she needs the medication, she needs the therapist, she needs the support. But I think our strength comes from knowing that we've got somebody to turn to in the darkest days that helps us get through this.
Right.
But it's, you said it beautifully the other day in service at church, that it's spirit. I mean, you've got a soul, you've got a spirit, you've got a body.
Yeah.
And we have to look at all those components, not just one. And people say, if you just take your medication, you'll be well. Medication's a part of it.
Yeah.
There's so many other parts
to
mental illness.
Yeah. And I've said this on this podcast, this isn't like a revelation when we talked about mental health. I had medication. One didn't work. The second one began to have some effect, and you were present for my wife at a point that we needed you, and it was in transition between medicines, and so the second one started to have effect, and that was good. What I started realizing in that process was, and I don't even know why I went down this road. I think it was Jennifer actually said, we probably need to read Caroline Leaf, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. So I started reading Dr. Leaf's book and discovered neurocycle and neuroscience, and that opened this whole world of how the brain works and functions. And her having a Christian worldview kind of got me down some other paths, like Kurt Thompson and Pete Scazzaro, and what I started discovering was the role of consciousness in the human mind, being separate from and being what really is the driving force of using the brain to regulate the body. Yep. And what I started, this was just me, I started discovering that as I learned to exercise my mind, actually get control of my mind, which I never realized I didn't have control of my mind, that my mind was running me.
Yes.
I could turn around, and what I started finding is I could turn my brain down or up with my mind. I started then feeling the side effects of the medicine I never felt before, because the effect was going away because I was managing that, and I started feeling side effects. And when I started feeling side effects, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And then that's when I realized, and that was just me. That's not everybody. Not everybody should do that, and I'm not advocating that everybody should do that. I just discovered that immaterial part of us is super vital in mental health. It's not just the physical; it is that, but it's also that immaterial part, which I think is probably the hardest component.
Oh yes.
I think I've said I would rather dig a ditch to California with a toothpick than try to manage my mind.
Well, I tell you, at one time, Jamie was on 52 pills a day.
Wow.
I mean, 52 pills a day. She's down to one mental health.
Wow.
And that was by her design, too. For her saying, I'm taking control of this.
Yeah.
There are times that she doesn't. But, I mean, we've been in a spot for, 4, 5, 6 years now.
Yeah.
Because she has, same thing.
Yeah.
She's learned about it. She has decided to take control of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference.
It does make a difference. I think it's easy to undersell the human's power of will to exercise control, and that it's empowering when you realize you can, But somebody had to teach me that. That didn't come natural.
But you had to have a support system around you.
Had to have a support system.
That will tell you that is one of the most critical things that you have to have, is a support system around you.
Yeah.
So that they can either help. I mean, sometimes we have to say, "Look, stop."
Yeah.
Or come and say, "Let me love you a little bit."
Yeah.
I mean, so you've got to have that support system around to help you get through, because sometimes when you're in the midst of this, and you probably know this, Mitch, you can't see the forest for the trees.
No.
And you don't know which way to turn, and need to have somebody there to be able to help you and guide you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's important. And we as family members, we've got to learn that.
Yeah.
And that's why our family to family and our support groups is critical to what we do.
Yeah.
Is because we need support
Yeah.
in order to move forward to help our daughter.
It's huge. It's huge.
We talk a lot about, that we were created to be in community, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we obviously we push it a lot at our church, and we've talked about it here. And I mean, I think back just even to Jesus' time, there's a reason that he had a support system around him. And while maybe Scripture doesn't lay this out, so I'm speculating a little bit, but we know Jesus was born with human thoughts, human emotions, and if that's the case, the amount of that hate he got and just disagreements with him probably had to wear on him sometime. Or maybe it was the travel, maybe it was the responsibility, the weight of the world, if you will. And I imagine a lot of that was probably him working that out with the disciples or with his family, with that support system. And like I said, I'm not, you don't have to take my word for that, but I imagine there's a part of that there. And you're right. There's just, no matter whether it's children, adults, whether it's 12 diagnoses or one, that support system can make a gigantic difference.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of when you said the support system, tongue in cheek, don't go to sleep now. I'm up here bleeding tears of blood and you're asleep out there. Wake up, come. And they tried it 2 times. So he asked for their support system, and they were just not able to do it at the time.
Yeah, it's. I think when Kurt Thompson defines the mind, there's a fascinating component. He's a medical doctor, he's a neurologist, and one of the things he says when he defines the mind, which points to the support system component, says the mind is an embodied and relational process emerging from within and between brains that regulates the flow of energy and information. I absolutely adore that definition, and I know it's a mouthful because there's a lot of background to that, a lot of neurology, neurobiology, I think that's the right word, and theology in that definition. He's a Christian, he's a medical doctor, he's a neurologist, but the understanding between brains, that there is literally a vibe, an electric vibe that happens between brains, which is why that support system, when you're in that deep, dark place, you have to have somebody vibing in a different place.
Absolutely.
To help pull you out of that.
Absolutely.
And quite literally, there's enough science to show that just physical proximity can increase a person's mood to someone who's in the right place. You can physical proximity helps, and touch.
And touch.
Yeah.
Touch is important.
Huge. Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
God made us to not be isolated, and what happens when you're in that place, and people are watching this and struggling, the gravitational pull of the illness is to isolation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it will suck you into, and it feels like you need that, and so that's the gravitational pull. But it's actually that's not what you need, and so you need somebody to help co-regulate you and bring you out of that, and then you start feeling the wellness. Yeah.
Or there's a gravitational pull towards others dealing with the same issues, which is not healthy either. And I think we see that. I'm not trying to compare mental health to those who are abusing drugs or alcohol, but the recovery process has some similar elements, though. I mean, there's a reason that they're not don't just go to a class to listen to a guy talk. It's you need to recover and you need to be around people, and that part's okay. But what I was just to add that people either isolate or they often gravitate towards someone else who can at least know what they're feeling and they're thinking. Mm-hmm. And but if they're with that person in isolation without healthy people being there for support, then they're not getting the help they need either. Well,
it was interesting because we had just started a support group here at Restoration Rome last week, and we had a man come in, and he goes, "I don't belong here," and he didn't want to be here, but he was mandated to be here. Mm. And so you could tell his back was up. He didn't want to be here, and he was going into that support group, and that was it. Mm. And he walked out, and he looked at me because I was sitting outside, and he said, "I have to apologize for my actions."
Wow.
He said, that was good for my soul. Mm. But he used the word soul.
Mm. Yeah. Wow.
But he was going in there, and he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he walked out and goes, "That was good for my soul."
Wow. That's beautiful. That's awesome. Yeah. Now you mentioned having an office here. How did talk about your office here and how what that's doing for NAMI? Like, what is it you guys have an employee, right? Yeah. So tell us about your office and tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, we were able to secure a grant, and that grant allows us to do 2 main things. One, and more meaningful, is to reach out to the community surrounding Restoration Rome, which is primarily a minority community of African Americans mainly. And many of them are not receiving care in many typical ways, but utmost importance to us is for them to know that there is support, mental health support, and how to access it. We figure one of the best things to do is go to where they are and operate out of here, and even bring some of our educational classes as well as our support groups and operate here. So that's the whole point, because we've been looking around our organization for the last 20 years, and we're primarily white. And unfortunately, mental illness is not that selective. It'll grab somebody regardless of race, color, or creed, and to that degree, we would love to be able to see the system more responsive to people of color. So that's what we hope to do.
That's good.
And the other part of that grant that we got is to go into the high schools and present a program called Ending the Silences, where two people go in, to like a health class or PE, and it's 50 minutes presentation. It's an older adult and a young adult, and the young adult tells their story of when I was in high school, I was isolating and I had these thoughts or whatever, and these kids in the school are going, wait a minute, I'm experiencing the same thing, but I didn't know what it was. So they know how to reach out and get help. And of course, we know that anytime that you get help early on, your prognosis is better.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing we're trying to do is get into the high schools to present this program so that the kids understand that there's help and there's hope.
Yeah.
And there's recovery, because there is recovery.
There is recovery.
Yeah, there is recovery.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be able to do those things.
So, no, Chris, you have some questions. I could do, I'm totally curious. And so I'm going to shut up.
No, it's okay. You asked most of them. It's fine.
I just had a thought, because, Jim, you said the word creed, and the thought entered my mind. What's the crossover between people coming from any faith background, which I would imagine where we are, it's mostly Christian if they're coming from a faith background, but do people come from other faith backgrounds to NAMI here in our town, whether it be Jewish or Muslim, or maybe they identify with some other religion?
Primarily Christian.
Okay.
It's interesting that Bonnie and I discuss this at times. Being part of a national organization, you have to be very careful and what you say. We've been warned, not we, but all of us who do a support group, have been warned about bringing religious aspects into the group. Telling people that their way to recovery is to find Jesus, which you and I would think that's true, but we have to avoid it. Just because, the times.
Sure.
We're living in the times where it's, we have to get the right pronouns right, as I said a while ago.
Yeah.
And that as well. So while we have been known to mention our faith and how important our faith is, but as far as...
shocked.
Yeah.
And as we know, that's our domain. So we have to be careful about, what you say.
Yeah. Well, I think that's wise, because in my short journey in this world, I feel like I'm fairly confident what I'm about to say here is that mental health is something that can be gained apart from one's faith, because it's an image of God issue and it's a human issue. And we've been given the tools as humans to seek health. I believe, however, with the lens of Jesus, the gospel, creation, fall, redemption, and restoration, we can see those solutions more clearly.
I agree.
But I still think other people can see them. And what I find interesting is they have, and we've been slow adopters, particularly in the Christian world, of those things. I think the most helpful books I've ever read is by if he ever hears this, I might get rebuked, but I don't know why he would hear this, so I'll say his name, Sean Webb, Mind Hacking Happiness. When you listen to him and you read him, I don't think there's a thing in him that screams Christian. But he's discovered, he says at the beginning of his book, he said, I'm not going to tell you what I know plenty. I'm going to show you how to use what I know. And so the book's all tools, and they work. And so what I find interesting is that human beings made in the image of God are able to access natural law.
Yeah.
Because God created it, and it's there. Psalm 19 tells us the heavens declare the glory of God. Day to day pours forth speech, but they're not talking, meaning in creation, and we can know ourselves, and we can know the world and help ourselves to a degree. But when we put the lens of who did all that on, it changes things. So I find it interesting that we're slow adopters as Christians, but I would be curious to find out if you guys run into Muslims or Jewish folks who are struggling and wonder why maybe they aren't or why they don't come forward.
No, we really don't. We did have a Jewish woman in one of our classes and came to some of our support groups, but
Right.
we really don't. Or if they do, they don't tell us.
They don't tell you.
But
Gotcha.
one of the things that you were talking about that one of the things that Jamie and I have done since 2006 is training law enforcement on mental illness.
Yeah.
And we talk about stigma, and in my some of the presentations I do, I'll ask people. I said, "Do you know where the word stigma comes from?" Well, no, not really. Have you ever heard of the word stigmata? Well, not really. Or some people have. And we talk about that's from the stripes of Christ.
Yeah.
So, and that's true,
Yeah.
is the stigma.
That's fascinating.
So, but I bring that out a lot, that
Yeah.
the stigma comes from the stripes of Christ.
All right, so you said law enforcement. Okay, there's another. So to what degree are a lot of issues that turn into prison really mental illness issues?
A lot. We've got some statistics, but we know the statistics are not right, because when we talk about mental illness, those are people that have been diagnosed.
Right.
And so in the prison system, we've got a lot of people that are not diagnosed
Right.
with mental illness.
Right.
And if you talk to people that are in the system, they'll tell you probably 75+% have a mental health issue. And if you talk to our sheriff here in Floyd County, we have a huge, huge amount of people living with mental illness in the jails. And I think, what does it say? Was it 24% in prison? But we know it's closer to probably 75. And I had the figures, and I forgot what they were in the jail. But our sheriff will tell you a huge amount of people have a mental health issue, and they stay in jail longer.
Yeah.
For less crime.
Right.
Wow.
Because they have burned their bridges with family, they have burned their bridges
Right.
with friends, so
Right.
they don't have anybody to come to their, I guess, rescue. Or
Right.
whatever.
Well, that environment is probably more conducive to either increasing or at least sustaining their mental health rather than it is helping them heal.
Well,
That's what I was thinking. If you are, if you're fine going in, and I don't know why I'm thinking this. I've never been, but it seems to me that it could just weigh on you for a while. So you're going to leave that place as a wreck.
Yeah.
well, PTSD. I
Yeah.
mean, there are other anxiety.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that support system when you get out, the likelihood of you going back in is pretty high.
Exactly.
Well, when
At least you were safe.
It's a recidivism.
Yeah. And when I think I'm accurate when I say this, most of the prison system is a for-profit industry.
Yes.
It's not a not-for-profit, and it's not the government trying to rehabilitate. It's to their advantage that people stay.
It is.
So it's not to their advantage to make them well. They make money the more they keep them in there. Did I open a can of worms?
Well, I don't know. I was just thinking in Georgia. I'm thinking of all the penal system, which
Right.
is state run, and
But there are several private prisons
I mean,
in the
there's
state of
some.
Georgia.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, okay. So, I could go. Chris, rescue me. Ask questions. You have some stuff. Jump
No,
in.
it's fine. You said do I have any, and then you asked 17 more, so it's fine.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. One of my questions I've just had is, for Jim, I know we talked about the Air Force, and it's like 26 years.
26.
I think it's fairly common knowledge. There's a link between those who have served in the military and mental health. Not everybody, of course, but there's certainly some results of that. I'm just curious, do you see that often? Do you guys work with veterans, or at least does your experience in the Air Force help you when working through some of those things?
Rome is kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of isolated of some degree. There are not a lot of veterans that we see, and the ones that we know of would have worn a different color uniform than me. So I wore blue. Greens and olive drabs are the Army folks, and that's who I think that and Marines, of course, deal with that more, because while I was operating, I was at 7 miles above them.
Right.
And I didn't get to feel the reverberations of a 500-pound bomb, hitting me close by. So I'm thinking of them having more direct experiences.
But we have in our support group on Monday nights, we do have 2 veterans that are in the support group with Jamie that have a result of when they were in the military.
Right.
So we do have some people, and we have taught family members through family to family of how to interact with their loved one. We've got a friend that was military, and his wife came as a last-ditch effort to see what she could do to help him, because she was getting ready to leave. And that class saved their marriage.
Wow.
And we ran into him a year or so after she took the class, and we didn't know who he was. And he came up and thanked us, and it's like, I don't know you. And then anyway, long story short, he said, you saved my marriage. And then his parents took the class, and he's doing extremely well, productive, and has a fantastic job. And, so I feel like
Praise God.
at least we've saved one marriage. But anyway, long story short, they are of the Christian faith, and and it was one of those things that we did talk about it with them. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, NAMI has a class that you can either take online or in person. It's called Homefront, and it's for mainly family members of someone, like a spouse that is living with PTSD or something. So NAMI has a variety of courses, and we offer what we can here locally, as we are one of 22, I think they said, in Georgia, and one of 600 NAMIs across our country. So we're...
And I'd venture to say that we're probably one of the, even though we're small, I'd say we're probably one of the strongest within the state. We probably offer more things than most of them do. Of course, except in the Atlanta area, but then you've got a huge population.
Right.
But considering we're out kind of away from everything, we're pretty active.
Yeah, thank goodness we are away from
Atlanta.
Yes. So can someone, are there folks who are court mandated
Yes.
to come to you guys?
Yeah, we partner, and this is a great thing. We're partner with the mental health court here in Floyd County, and we scratch their back and they scratch ours. When we do a class, an 8-week class called Peer to Peer, thank goodness for the court, because they'll send 8 to 10 people. They require them to attend. And so we appreciate that, and we give them incentives on a monthly basis for those who are doing well in the program. So we've got this symbiotic, is that the word, relationship with Judge Johnson and Amy with mental health court. So,
That's cool.
And our Davies shelter, we partnered with them.
Okay.
Because during the day, their residents have to
Yeah.
leave, and so they're talking about, or they have said that if you have a mental health issue, that they want them to come to this class during the middle of the day. Not class, but support group.
Yeah.
Like I said, 3 came in, and they go, we don't belong here, and they all walked out going, somebody understands me.
That's good. That's really awesome. Now, you guys do a service that I've been privileged to be a part of in the past. Tell us about that service.
It's, to me, one of the most meaningful things that we do is the Candlelight service, which is on the first Tuesday of Mental Health Awareness Week, which is the first week in October. And it is a religious, last time, as a matter of fact, I think when you did it, Mitch, was he Muslim from Barry? Or was it another time?
It was another time, I think.
Anyway, so we've had other there. But it's there to honor and to recognize people living with mental illness and their families, and it's somewhat scriptural, but it's very meaningful, I think, because it says that we've got somebody to support us.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's an opportunity too to be in the public square, because one of the things you guys know, I'm preaching the choir here. It's when we're in the public square, we're dealing with multi-faith, no faith, And to be able to have a service where you're able to bring the name of Christ into a place where you might have a Muslim, it is a chance to bear witness to the gospel, but also show that there's some common things in humanity we can work together on, and never compromise our distinctives.
Exactly.
And I love how you guys do that. I just think it's admirable, and it's an example of what we're talking about when we talk about engage your domain. Lead with your distinctions. Don't cover them up. And by all means, do the work of healing and say to them, the kingdom of God has come near to you.
Exactly.
I think you guys do it well.
But
Chris,
we've also had the Jewish community part of that. Part of,
Yes.
of that candlelight ceremony.
I
which-
think most people don't realize there's a Jewish community in
Exactly.
Rome and Floyd County, but they are. Rodef Shalom
Yep.
is there. I've invited them to lunch with a Muslim, and they haven't returned my calls, because I would like to take you lunch. I'll buy your lunch with a imam, a pastor, and some rabbis, and they think that's really weird. But I'm like, I'm going to win one day and get them
Boy,
to lunch.
I think that would be fantastic.
That'd be a lot of fun. It's
Sounds like a good
let's all try
podcast.
to convert each other and see what happens. Be absolute blast. So, Chris, you got some questions to ask them to how folks can get involved and what are needs. So, won't you?
Yeah.
Take us out
My
with that.
final question for you guys is just, I guess it's kind of a multi-part here. Number one, tell us where people can find out more about NAMI. How can people get involved with NAMI? And then kind of what are some of your current needs?
Well, let me give you an excellent website, for individuals ranging. Let's say I'm a college student and I'm doing a paper on mental illness. If you need some facts and figures, go to www.nami.org, and right there you can find all kinds of stuff. So that kind of creates the national part of the program. Down here at the local level, we offer, services for our neck of the woods, and our website is www, if I'm trying to say it like a radio, NAMIROMEGA, NAMI Rome, Georgia.org. We're on Facebook. You can get to us by just putting NAMI Rome in there. We're there. We're on Twitter as well as Instagram. So that's how to. Now, what was you
The phone
answered
number,
that.
phone number
Oh, yeah.
706-506-5010. 706-506-5010.
Awesome.
And we'll put all these in the description.
Yeah. If somebody's struggling, isn't there a 3-digit number someone can call to get help?
988.
988.
988.
If you're in a dark place and need some
Exactly.
instant help,
And
988.
As a matter of fact, they have a what they call a warm line, so somebody can call in and say they're struggling. They don't need to have somebody come out and check on them, but they just need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
They can call 988. They can get that warm line, and they can just talk to somebody. Or if we need to send, or if they need to send a team out, they can send a team out. We've had teams come out to a McDonald's. They
Wow.
can come to wherever you are, and they send a team of 2, somebody living with a diagnosis and a professional.
Wow.
And they come out and do an evaluation. If they think they can help you set up appointments with doctors, they can help either get you into the hospital or support. So they can do lots of different things. But and there's no cost to it.
Wow.
There's no cost for that professional to come out and do an evaluation of where you are. It's 988.
988. That's huge. That's absolutely huge.
And it's nationwide, but NAMI Georgia, not NAMI Georgia, the state of Georgia has always had what we call single point of entry, which was an 800 number, but now it's switched over to 988. So a lot of other states looked at Georgia because we already had that.
Wow.
That's great.
That's huge.
It's manned 24/7
By professionals.
therapist, and they can then in turn dispatch, if they needed to, dispatch a team, or if they have to do something immediate, they could contact law enforcement, through 911 and see what happens.
Wow.
One of the things what Bonnie said is that we would love to be able to see a greater involvement of with a partnership with mental health experts and law enforcement. It's moving in that direction nationwide, and there's conversation right here in Florida County about hiring a therapist to, go along with a law enforcement officer to respond to those calls, those mental health calls.
That'd be huge.
Yes.
That would be absolutely huge. That could prevent an awful lot of downstream issues. Well, as a closing note, is there anything else you guys want to tell us about NAMI? Is there anything coming up? Anything you guys want to share before we close out?
Well, we're getting ready to offer 2 classes. One's called peer-to-peer, and that's where Jamie and another person will be teaching other people living with mental illness about their illnesses, relapse plans, about the brain, about everything, the whole person.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we'll be teaching family to family, and these are 8-week courses with no cost to teach family members about their loved one's illness. But the main thing about these 2 courses are communication.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we don't know how to communicate with each other.
Right.
Whereas these classes teach people how to communicate.
Start when? On September 7th, right?
Nope.
Oh, no. April 7th.
April the 7th.
April 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they on 8 Sunday afternoons in Rome. And
From
we
2
look
to
forward to
4:30.
it. Yeah, you contact us on that number. I'll give it to you again, 706-506-5010, and you can ask questions and register for those.
I've been teaching that class since 2000.
Wow.
So I'm going into my 24th year of teaching
Wow.
it.
So you're clearly an expert. You've got it down.
But the thing is, I've taught that class 2 to 3 times a year.
Amazing.
And every class I teach, I learn something different.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's beautiful. Well, guys, thank you for taking time to come here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you in, and so we're just grateful for you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your labor. It clearly, it has the aroma of Christ all over it. So well done, good and faithful servants. Guys, we appreciate you guys listening to Theology in the Dirt. We're grateful for your partnership. Some of you cats who actually give to this blasted thing and make this thing happen. For you guys who listen, share the podcast, give it a 5-star rating. If you go into Google or Spotify and you leave any comment whatsoever, it increases the rating and more people share it and all that good stuff. So please do that. Check out the website. Check out Spotify, check out Apple, iHeartRadio. It's available on all those platforms. It's on YouTube also. And check out the website. We'll have NAMI's website in the show description down there. You can check it out, and the phone numbers and all that good stuff. And we appreciate you guys listening. It's a joy to do this, and we appreciate all the folks who support us. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Out.